A man for 20 years Federal Street cats at his office, but quit. They soon found his house. A man named Joe Fonsek had worked in a small California town office for over 20 years. All this time, he took care of the furry inhabitants of the parking lot near his workplace, providing them with daily food. These cats knew the exact time of arrival and always met him with great gratitude and affection. However, the time has come for a change, and Joe decided to take a well-deserved rest by going into retirement. He regretted that he could not continue to take care of his purring friends, but life required new steps. And suddenly, a few days later, the cats found their way to Joe's house. His dwelling turned out to be close to his workplace, and he was amazed and at the same time glad to see the rows of his purring companions moving towards his house. All these cats were, in fact, his friends. And so the routine began. Day after day, the cats came to him at a certain time, and Joe could not refuse them food. However, it did not take long for the neighbors to pay attention to this strange custom. Dissatisfied tenants decided to complain to the house management. Soon, a representative of the management company was knocking at Joe's doorstep, holding a stack of documents confirming the rules of residence. These papers clearly stated that keeping animals in this dwelling is prohibited. Although not all residents observed this rule, some kept cats or dogs aside. It was impossible to hide the fact that Joe had almost 20 cats every day. In the United States, laws in the area of domestic relations are quite strictly enforced, as violations often result in severe penalties. For Joe, this meant that if he did not stop attracting cats, he would face high fines and possible eviction, since the house was not his, but was rented. Thus, Joe found himself in a very difficult situation. He could not forbid cats to come to his house, since they are animals and do not understand such prohibitions. However, he also could not afford to pay huge fines, as he was not rich and did not have his own home. He could just try to ignore the situation, stop feeding the cats, but that wouldn't stop them from showing up. On the other hand, the house management could attract a specialized service for catching animals, and the further fate of these cats remained in question, probably rather sad. Thus, Joe faced a difficult choice. Unable to resist housekeeping, he also couldn't betray his furry friends. The question arose as to what to do in such a situation. Fonsek actively called all the shelters in the area, but everywhere he met with refusals. There was simply no place for additional furry animals, since overcrowding reigned everywhere. The man was almost losing hope, but suddenly there was a turn in the situation. One of the shelters agreed to provide assistance. Arriving there with the first kitten, Fonsek was amazed by the terrible conditions. The place seemed wild and neglected. However, the staff of the shelter amazed him. They were people full of kindness and dedication to their work. Despite the lack of funds and funding, their inner fervor motivated them to help as much as possible. This decisiveness and enthusiasm gave Fonsek a second wind. Then the man thought, why would he just sit in retirement, do nothing, and allow himself to turn into a weak old man? It was at this point that he decided to take the case. First, he gathered all the cats who regularly came for food. All in turn, there were about 20 of them. He sent them all to the same shelter. Then he began to improve the conditions of this orphanage. Fonsek was a needleworker, and with the orphanage's limited funds, he was able to procure some building materials. Having no funds to hire workers, he took on all the work, mastering the construction in the process. Thus, thanks to his titanic efforts and labor, the shelter became much more comfortable and attractive. Although he remained far from wealth, he took on a human form, getting rid of the atmosphere of horrors. Fonsek then began volunteering at the shelter, and now he could meet his furry friends almost every day until they managed to find permanent homes and caring owners.